Welcome to Reviving the Republic. It's April 4th, 2020. Is the Republic dead? Lately it seems like it is. Can it be revived? Only you know that. We got a good show lined up for you. What are we gonna do, people? You know, over the last couple weeks, the republic that we live in, the republic that our founders fought and died for, is under attack. This might seem like an exaggeration, but in fact, it's the absolute truth. What are you willing to do? You need to ask yourself in this great time of peril, because that's what it is. What are you willing to do to stand up and defend the Constitution of the United States of America? You need to sit for a minute and ask yourself, is everything worth giving up? And to some of you, maybe it is. And maybe you haven't had the values instilled in you the way I have, the way many have. And that's clear that is a large portion of the population now, which is very sad. But I have not given up hope. I know many of you have not given up hope. So, what are we willing to do? When is it too much? What will you take? What will you accept? Because the fight is never fought on equal footing. The fight is always fought with you on uneven ground and those who wish to take your freedoms and liberties up on a pedestal. And that's just always how it's been. Psychological warfare. So, anyway, we have an article here tonight that we're going to cover. And it's from the Washington Times. It's called Taking Constitutional Rights Seriously During COVID-19 Pandemic. And this article was written by Andrew Napolitano, who is a judge, as many of you do know. You know, I've been critical of Andrew Napolitano many times throughout his tenure. He's had a lot of good stuff, don't get me wrong. He's had a lot of good stuff. He is, as far as I am concerned, he's a good principled libertarian. But he has thrown me for a loop a couple times, but this article seems to redeem himself, so I'm going to start because we have limited time here. The podcast app that I'm using has a 15-minute time limit, so here we go. Let's get started. If the provisions of the Constitution be not upheld when they pinch as well as they comfort, they may as well be abandoned. And that is by Justice George Sutherland, 1862 through 1942. In his 2008 book, Taking Rights Seriously, the late Professor Donald Dworkin explored the origins and governmental treatment of human liberty. He argued that Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, and James Madison, the scrivener and the Constitutional Convention and the author of the Bill of Rights at the Constitutional Convention, were clear in their articulations that the premise of America and its birth is that our rights are personal and natural because they come from our humanity, not from the government. Dworkin also recognized that government, which is essentially the negation of liberty, is only moral and valid when it enjoys the consent of the governed, respects individual rights as inalienable, and interferes with them only after it proves fault to a jury at a fair trial. The Dworkin thesis is obviously not novel, but he wrote it toward the end of his illustrious career as a bulwark against those in government and academia who argued to the contrary. These folks claimed, and do so today, that the law is whatever those in power say it is, and the dead hands of the framers cannot control the living hands of those whom the people have elected. To these folks, the majority rules, even when it is tyrannically toward a minority. This argument that a popularly elected government can trump individual liberties is utterly repugnant to the concept of natural rights and accepts as somehow lawful the horrific acts of popularly elected governments for which the 19th and 20th centuries are well known. This view also rejects the plain language and, since 1803, consistent judicial recognition of the U.S. Constitution as the supreme law of the land that must be repeatedly articulated. The U.S. Constitution as the supreme law of the land. The Constitution was written to keep the government off the people's backs and to assure their natural rights are free from government restraint. The concept against which natural law is arrayed and against which Dworkin argued is regrettably on display in America today. People are getting sick and dying. Yes. The same government that can't stop robocalls micromanages the delivery of healthcare in the United States and monopolizes medical procedures, like testing for a virus, that the free market can do better and faster. Because the government tolerates no competition, it was uninformed and ill-prepared. So, the essence of its response has been to treat our freedoms as if they were licenses to be rescinded on governmental whims, not guarantees as declared by the Declaration and Constitution. No matter how well-intended is New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, he is the chief executive of the government of the state of New York. He is not the legislature. He cannot write laws and cannot enforce whatever he has written. That is the least of his transgressions. The greatest of them is his interference with rights expressly guaranteed in the Constitution, that he and all others in government have taken an oath to uphold. Do you realize this? An oath to uphold. He has taken it, we have all taken it, who have served in government. I admire deeply Mr. Cuomo's brilliant use of his bully pulpit to educate and intimidate the populace into common sense behavior intended to limit the spread of coronavirus. But he cannot lawfully, nor could the legislature interfere with the right to travel and to assemble peacefully, because those liberties are guaranteed by the Constitution. They cannot be interfered with by decree or even by legislation, no matter the beneficial goal of the interference. It gets worse. Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo is stopping automobiles with out-of-state license plates as they attempt to enter Rhode Island. and denying them entry. She has also threatened to send police door to door looking for persons from the New York City region who somehow eluded her border dragnet. Totally unconstitutional. And she is doing this with no warrants, no probable cause of crime, and no individualized suspicion. In New York City, where Mayor Bill de Blasio has declared music stores essential to society, but churches, synagogues, and mosques to be non-essential, we have seen the boldest threat yet. He offered to close permanently, any house of worship that presently holds religious services. This barbarity directly violates the free exercise clause of the First Amendment that keeps government out of religion. And in New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy is arresting folks for holding coronavirus parties. The parties are insane. The attendees are reckless and their behavior is selfish. But it is not criminal. In fact, it is protected by the right to assemble, which is also expressly guaranteed in the Constitution. What if these assemblages are not for frivolity, but to protest the unconstitutional behavior of the government? Then they'd achieve even added protection, the freedom of speech. What's going on in America? Justice George Sutherland was prescient in 1934 when the Constitution pinches the government. He warned the government abandons it. If constitutional abandonment is not challenged by those most affected by it, a future generation of public officials will argue that the current generation acquiesced. That might happen as soon as the present crisis has passed. The government loves power, and power once possessed is rarely voluntarily relinquished, and that is an absolute fact. When President George W. Bush argued after 9/11 that he needed temporary mass suspicionless surveillance powers to find the terrorists hiding among us, and Congress gave it to him, that power remained in the government. What started as listening to phone calls and monitoring bank accounts has now become following the movements in real time of all persons with mobile device and capturing every keystroke on every computer. Unless we follow the Constitution, crisis produces fear, and fear produces madness, and madness produces those who become a law unto themselves. Written by Andrew P. Napolitano, a former judge of the Superior Court of New Jersey. Now, what he said is absolutely right there. What is going on right now in America needs to be heeded by every citizen in this country. We must take this seriously. If we do not, the transgressions will get more and more. It's only a matter of deductive reasoning. What has happened previously? What has happened in history? How have our rights been trampled on by the plea of necessity? The plea of necessity is always used by tyrants. It is the argument of tyrants, and it is accepted by the slaves. I just want to leave you with this. I just want to leave everyone with the concept that if we do not keep our individual liberties sacred, the government surely is not going to do so. They will take, and they will take, and they will take, until there is nothing more to take. Until you wake up with nothing more. You'll wake up naked, cold, and that's basically it. Have a good night, everyone. I hope you heed the warning.